remember at the beginning of the season, we're still in the writer's room and we showed all of the writers, Margot, your drawings of the village. And it just got everybody so excited. Not only was it a beautiful set, but it was such a story point in terms of the creation of the world. You know, these girls are now at a point where they are not just surviving, but they are really building their own little civilization. Hello, I am Ashley Lyle. I am one of the co-creators and executive producers and co-showrunners of Yellowjackets. And I am here with
Bart Nickerson. I'm also one of the co-showrunners and co-creators, and this is The Process.
Hi, I'm Margot Reddy, and production designer on Yellowjackets.
See where we are? You've been here already, Maury. You could let it be different. Oh my God, fuck off!
So we are here with The Process to talk about The Process. We are specifically focusing on the answer to everyone's favorite question, apparently, which was, who is Pit Girl? So this season, we finally circled all the way back to the beginning and recreated the Pit Girl sequence, revealing that Pit Girl was in fact Maury. So Margot, my first question, or our first question for you, is when we talked and we said, okay, we're doing it. We're finally going back. We're going to do Pit Girl. What was the beginning of your process for recreating this sequence? Because not only were we, 7 years later from when we shot it in the pilot, but we were in a completely different place. We shot that sequence in Mammoth, California, and now we were in beautiful British Columbia, outside Vancouver. So what was your beginning process? How did you approach it? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really great challenge. I think we always knew this was going to come up in the show. So we carefully watched the pilot multiple times to get a sense, just get a sense of where are we? What does it feel like this part of the wilderness? And our first thought, of course, was, as we discussed with you guys, which was, are we building the pit in the ground? I think we felt that was the only way to go. It's kind of a brave way to go. A lot of shows would fake it and use VFX. We're like, no, we're just going to build this hole in the ground in Vancouver. So we did. It was a big engineering thing, and we actually had to get an engineer, and we built some concrete walls, and we had a sump pump because, of course, being Vancouver, it's going to flood. So that was our first decision. And then we, of course, studied the pilot and the location photos very carefully. It's really different ecosystem in Mammoth from where we are here. So there's a specific, there's the pine trees, of course, the Jeffrey pines. And we actually brought some in, as we do, to kind of create the feel and the texture of it. And also the birch trees. There's the birches with the eyes in them and just the presence of, different kinds of trees than here. So we carefully tried to recreate as best we could the actual footprint and the actual type of species of trees, knowing that we start in greenery and in summer, and we're going to end up in artificial snow as well. So we had a couple challenges. There's the pit itself, the greenery, and also the snow. So from the beginning, we tried to recreate it as faithfully as possible. But then later, talking to Bart, in Bart's episode 2, there was a question of how it's going to be filmed. And that became part of the conversation as well. How much are we going to see, and how's it going to intercut? And, was really fantastic to see that in the final cut as well.
Yeah, I mean, because as I recall, part of the challenge was just trying to figure out kind of even how deep it was going to be, because I think we had some dimensions from the pilot but those turned out to not even be correct. If you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, there was actually, I think, 2 feet of snow in the pilot, real snow, and so we had to sort of take that into account because they had dug, I think, a 7 foot deep pit, but we're looking at it going, "There's no way that's 7 feet." Like that's, so we had to kind of artificially lengthen it because, of course, we were using artificial snow, which is just 4 inches deep, and then, of course, because it was actually snowing in the pilot as well, or there was actual snow on the ground, we had to make fake kind of carved walls and sort of frost them up and recreate the look, not in deep winter and not in real snow. So it was definitely some differences in how we did things from the pilot as well.
I remember very specifically when we were coming up to shooting, that was the last thing we shot in the pilot, and we were praying for snow. We needed it to be snowy up there, and then we got too much snow. It was
really?
Up. It snowed a lot. And so, yeah, I remember when we had those conversations about how do we match the fact that the walls of the pit were actually snowed in the beginning as well.
I was going to say we're always striving for realism as well, right? So it's sort of a lot of R&D as to how to create what looks like real carved walls, but also like that frosted snow look where it could still look real.
Right. And now, as I recall, even the placement kind of the pit, we shoot the wilderness stuff at Panther Paintball in Vancouver, which is used by quite a few kind of productions. And so, yeah, like it's always kind of fascinating while scouting to see what the different departments are looking for in kind of an area, because it's like, it's not always the best match kind of as it is. It's that like, the like the technicians, like, kind of are able to see what this could be. And then there's obviously a lot of kind of logistical considerations. If you could talk about those, that'd be.
Yeah, well, the area we ended up as, remember we initially scouted that as a potential village location. It was kind of a natural clearing in the woods. The pit's in a very small clearing in the pilot, but not a large clearing. But there's this large clearing. We're like, we could put the village here and it would be fine. But then we actually found the fantastic creekside location that had, it was basically a peninsula and had a hill behind it. So much more visual interest for that scene. Then we thought back to that empty space. And we're like, in some ways, a space that's open, it's like a 50-foot diameter open circle, is perfect. Because then we create ourselves our little stage and we bring in our pit. We had it, engineered to be able to carve it. We, make sure we can carve the pit into there. And then it gave us kind of a free reign. It was a pretty big job, though, bringing in the trees, landscaping it, because flat ground does not look real. So we had to create some, dimensionality, bringing in all the deadfall and then ultimately mossing it over. And of course, there's the stages where earlier we see the pit open and then, there's the whole testing of the lid of it so that, trying to capture Lottie and all that.
Yeah, because the pit actually plays in the first kind of episode. And like, it's seen kind of obviously a few times throughout. And then we did cheat a little bit of pit stuff, right? We created that little wall thing. This stuff just always cracks me up, is like a little piece of pit where if you kind of manage the frame, could actually play for kind of inserts. And there was quite a bit of stuff that we shot just using that little piece of wall, I guess, dirt wall.
We knew that we wanted to get Mari in the pit, which obviously, it's very challenging to get in the actual pit. So the finger twitch, we really wanted to match from the pilot to show, Alexa in the pit itself. And you created this sort of creation where we could fake being in the pit so that we could get that shot. And speaking of, I feel like this show presents so many challenges from a production design standpoint from the very beginning. Obviously, we have the cabin, and then last season you built the beautiful cabin on the stages to match exactly what we had out in the wilderness. I feel like this season was the most challenging of all because, as you said, we start in the springtime to end up in this sequence, in the winter with heavy snowfall. Do you talk a little bit about the creation of, because I remember when we were pitching, you brought up, scouting, we were scouting for the pit, we were scouting for the village, and then you found the village setting, that amazing creekside. And I remember when you sent us your first So everybody knows Margot makes these beautiful renderings of all of the potential sets that we're going to do. And she had mocked up a very beautiful, like, I think we have one framed somewhere, honestly, of the village itself. And I remember at the beginning of the season, we're still in the writer's room and we showed all of the writers, Margot, your drawings of the village. And it just got everybody so excited because the village was such a focal point of this season. And not only was it a beautiful set, but it was such a story point in terms of the creation of the world. You know, these girls are now at a point where they are not just surviving, but they are really building their own little civilization. I would love for you to talk about what went into that process, because I think it's my favorite set that we've ever had on this show.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was such an amazing set for us to do. Such a great challenge. It's so interesting. And, you know, we built it for reals too. You know, it's not really faked. It's all real twigs that the Greens department like snapped on their knees and, you know, built it at a real location, not on stage. It was an interesting process. I feel like going back to when we were first scouting, we were going to take the easy route and build the village in the, you know, kind of easily accessed by the road opening in the forest. And then we were wandering around and kind of bushwhacking really into like a bunch of brambles. And we kind of went down the hill. We're like, you know, this is kind of, we're not going to do this down here, but this, let's just go look. And then we went down and found this amazing peninsula surrounded by I mean, it was just perfect. It was the perfect size. Didn't want it too big because you don't want it to expand too much. It felt like it played with the other parts of the forest, but was a little more pastoral, more birch trees. You know, that in some ways played well with the pit, like some of the more deciduous trees that, you know, we had birch trees and we brought a few of the pines in as well to kind of like feel like it belongs. And we did a bunch of renderings. Our whole art department went and took photos because we were just like, you know, this is going to be tricky. We're going to have to raise all of the greens and start again. So we did a bunch of renderings and photos and the 3D models that I was working on to try to say, hey, it's worth it. And I think it was really worth it. We got so used to the tiny little extra truck down the hill to get there for what it gave us.
Bridge.
Yeah, we built the bridge. That's right. For what it gave us, I'm so happy that we went there.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful. And yeah, like I can very viscerally kind of remember the first time kind of walking onto that set. And it wasn't even completed yet, but it was just such a powerful space that you had created. Because I think in part because, you know, the show, you know, it's obviously a kind of TV show and it's all being kind of made up. But it does have a kind of a life and kind of an energy. And like the thing that I just felt was this like very strong pride in the Yellowjackets. You know, yeah, I was just like, man, they're doing it out here. Like, and it's a very strange feeling, but I think it's a testament to, you know, the design and the care and how sort of like beautifully kind of all of these things were put together.
I remember you guys saying early on that the feeling had to be that some of them at least, wouldn't really want to leave. So we had to kind of find that fine line of what could you build. You know, we've had the conversation about the book. Someone's sort of a bit of an architecture nerd. Someone's figured out, you know, they've gone through the stages to figure out how to make these very simple round structures, but they start to have their own personality and they personalize it, you know, with bones and, you know, bits of flannel and so on. But also just that it's become home and they won't want to leave was really a great directive from the beginning to help us find that fine line where you could really plausibly believe that you feel like you could in theory survive another winter here and just stay here.
Yeah. And I feel like it's also worth mentioning maybe officially for the record that any lapses in kind of realism are very much kind of Ashley and I's fault. Kind of Margot like always starts with kind of what is possible and real. And then I feel like we're always just, you know, kind of living in the world of our own kind of imagination and kind of subjective experience. So, yeah, just to any kind of interested parties, like the blame falls on our shoulders.
Yeah, no, important to point out that a lot of it is even the things that people are like, oh, how did they do that? There was so much thought and care put into making sure that it was possible. So, you know, all the wire was wire from the airplane. The any leather and fabrics we see were scavenged from the plane. It all is stuff that could have been there and would have been there. And I also feel like it's important to point out that we did not give you a ton of guidance, as I remember in the beginning, Margot. We said, we want there to be, I think we kept saying witch huts, and we might have given sort of a few pictorial examples. But you were the one who, when we had some of our early meetings about it, you had a full layout and had really thought through, here is where each person is sleeping. This is what their particular hut would look like. This is how they would personalize it. And you had an entire map drawn out. And so, what was some of your thought process into like who was sleeping where and how they would make their particular hut very specific to them?
I think that's one of the things that's really fun about production design. Like a lot of designers, my architecture background, still I originally went through architecture school, and that kind of informs me, I think, but it's also very different. Production design is what I love, is it's designing to story and working with writers like yourselves so that the design is part of the story and rooted either in character and intention. So for me, actually, it's interesting. I sat down and I just thought about everybody and like, where would they like to be and what would they do? And Lottie has the sort of circular window because we play it sort of forward with her sharing shack in season 2. And I put her at the head of the sundial, as it were, because despite the kind of, next to her is Shauna and Natalie fighting for power, but in some ways Lottie's the one who just kind of can just quietly move the needle with like, yeah, we're not going, like she kind of has a lot of power. So I put her at the top and then sort of played it out in a weird way, like in my idea of like how sometimes their hierarchies play out among them. Misty's in the loft with 2 of the kind of people that we don't know very well, and Akila's growing flowers on her hut because she's very sort of nurturing and she's dealing with the flowers and the plants. So just, Ty and Van are together, and they have their little 2 seats we had fun talking about that, as I recall it, the 2 seats from the airplane to kind of sit together. They're very much together. So just trying to find their character, discussing with you guys, where would they be and how would their character inform their choices? Just gives it that extra, little book lending library, because people like to read who would stick to Akila's place and Mari's, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. I remember when we brought the cast in for the very first time, they were so excited, and each and every one of them was like, this is perfect. Like they immediately saw how it spoke to their character and the joy on their faces. I think it really helped them get back into character. We had a long break between season 2 and season 3 because of the writer's strike, and the individualism and the specificity really, I think, helped them to immediately jump back into that time and place in that character, which was really wonderful to see.
That's really great to hear. And also another like fair conversation about going for it and building the sets, build the whole environment as a place for the cast to be and feel like they're there, and give it some realism and sense of place.
Yeah.
I feel like it paid off when we decided to go down there and went for it.
Yeah, for sure. And just because we only have a couple minutes left, I feel like we would be kind of remiss if we didn't discuss Snow Zone just a little bit. Because in kind of my memory, and please correct me if I'm, making the fish like grow that I caught a few years ago. But all of those little vignettes that we saw in the clip of the running, the fight between Shauna and Jen, and the Lottie kind of Mari, like took place within like 20 feet of each other.
Yeah.
Like Snow Zone, like all of that stuff was actually like in an incredibly efficient and compact area.
Yeah, snow is a precious resource. In season 2, as you may recall, we started to run out because of the stage set, and we had to kind of bring in from other provinces and so on. And it is a challenging, precious resource. It washes away quickly. You don't want to, you want to save it for the shooting day because footprints and resetting and so on. Yeah, and we did that area. It was not especially huge, and it had a couple of giant real trees. And then, as you recall, we brought in the smaller trees that were more like mammoth and moved them around a lot on the day. So we had super busy greens and special effects department resetting, and, it gets on your shoes and then it compounds and suddenly you're like a foot taller because you're walking around. It just picks everything up. So it was a lot of resets on the day. And then, of course, we brought in some of the sort of iconic figures that they had, the little wood and pine figure, and we moved all those around and the different tree species to make it feel bigger. Mm-hmm. And that was really fun for me to watch that in the clip, how that intersected with the one long alley of trees from the pilot as well. Felt like that was quite seamless and felt like it was the same place, which was great to see, because definitely a big day that day for all the team on set and for you guys too.
Well, I mean, kudos to you and your team, Margot, because I feel like the scope of it does feel quite incredible, and it feels very epic, which is what we wanted that sequence to be, knowing that we did have such limited resource, limited budget. We didn't have the great wide wilderness at our disposal. So just amazing job. We're so pleased with how it turned out.
Oh, that's great to hear. I mean, the pilot was so epic and vast and such a beautiful thing that it was really quite an interesting and fun challenge to try to kind of get in there and help you guys recreate it in a very specific way.
It turned out good. We think we think it turned out great, more than good. So yeah, and obviously you are just such a treasured member of this team, and we love working with you.
Oh, you guys too. Thank you. It was just such an amazing opportunity. And as you said, season 3 was just a fantastic opportunity for all of us in the design and art world. Just we got to create their culture, their look with you guys. It's really, really fantastic and fun, and just a once in a lifetime experience, really.
Well, and thanks so much for taking the time to have this conversation, and thanks to everybody for watching. This was The Process.
This was The Process. Thank you so much.